Today we're going to talk about social media, but new correlations that have been recognized and surveyed between the use monitoring of social media during working hours, in the workplace, outside the workplace, and its relation to ethical decline in the workplace. And we have a lot of interesting statistics to share with you to illustrate this decline and how it presents more risks of claims in the employment field. So, in the cloud, together with every other piece of electronic, and hopefully we'll come and have an understanding of just what is social media. As you can see from the icons that just popped up on your screen, there are probably a number you recognize, have seen, perhaps you use yourself. For our purposes, social media is defined as the tools and content that enable people to connect online, share their interests, engage in conversations, including blogs, media sharing sites, social networks, and other. A lot of these activities are facilitated by the cell phones, the PAs, and the like, which employees bring into the workplace. The inherent problem with social media and its use and its management is that people often post with thinking. They believe they're posting in private when in fact it's there for all to see. I think by Sharon Allen is very insightful, and I know you have it up on your screens, but I want to emphasize it by reading in red there. A single act can create far-reaching ethical consequences for individuals as well as organizations. Therefore, it's important for executives to be mindful of the implications and to elevate the discussion about the risks associated with it to the highest levels of leadership. And for you people today, the highest levels of leadership translate to the levels of leadership in the company, that is your customer, the entity which you're to sell. Social media really can open up a Pandora's box of risks when it's not well managed. And that really is the unnerving part. Some of these can include breach of confidentiality, interests, misuse of company resources. It really can touch on so many levels of a company operations, of the company's leadership needs media in context to its overall business operations. I'm going to show you a short film which I think puts into perspective at least what the impact of social media is to say today, because it changes every day. And some of the things you will see in this film are already outdated. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you to full screen button, your YouTube, a full screen. Make sure your volume is turned on, and dance.
Any reason playing for you, you can go ahead and press play on your browser, and you'll be able to see the video.
I hope that brought into perspective some of what we're dealing with today. Empirical evidence to supplement the film of which you should be aware. The number of smartphone shipments is expected to be 1 billion in 2015. Relating these statistics to you and others to show you how pervasive social media has become, not just in our lives, but in our customers' lives, particularly in the workplace. You saw some of the statistics from the film, and you'll see others regarding the frequency of employee use in the workplace. Smartphone sales are expected to increase by 25% from 172 million in 2011 to 630 million in 2012. 53% of American cell phone users now have a smartphone. And the reason I point that out is it's a phone that allows employees to access these social networking sites and compels employers to monitor them. Again, some more empirical evidence here. Numbers speak for themselves, and they're already outdated in as much as they're taken from 2010, but you can see the same players, with BlackBerry coming back recently. This is key. Average minutes per visitor to social media sites, 4 minutes. Much crossover here on ethical and compliance issues as well as legal risk. With the amount of time that the average visitor is spending on social media sites, you're certain that this is happening during work. Managing employee use, therefore, prevents loss of productivity. We want disclosure of the employer's confidential, trade secret, area information. We want ability risks. They should violate federal law, which I'm going to in just a moment, as we manage our corporate image and reputation concerns. When businesses have employees venting about their work on social media sites, and that venting may be contrary to the type of corporate image the company is attempting to cultivate, you can see how they can be at odds on the same page. We've talked about ethics. You've heard me use the word. Rather than get into a long philosophical discourse, I've simply put up a definition of ethics that I think works for us, the principles, standards that guide our behavior toward other people. And here's really where the conundrum lies with regard to the connection between social media monitoring and ethical behavior. I think we can all agree that was ethical, usually lawful. What unethical may also be lawful, such as tracker attempting to hack into an employee's personal Facebook page. Go a little further and add the term information ethics, which really illustrates the connection between social media and ethics, because the ethical and moral issues arising from the development and use of information technologies, i.e., electronic media, as well as creation, collection, duplication, distribution and processing of information itself. First time, share with you a survey on social media on ethics in the workplace. The survey was performed by the Ethics Resource Center, which is the oldest nonprofit organization in the U.S. to independent research and advancement of ethical standards and practices in both private institutions. And it's really the first report to explore the connections between ethics and social media. Here are some of the highlights. Misconduct is at an all-time low, with an all-time high. Pressure, alarmingly negative, a weakened ethics culture, the triggers, the resentment, and social media, and is ripe for an even further. So let's look at the type of employee that we surveyed, or that the F Center surveyed that formed a lot of their findings. This type of employee that was involved in the survey, and it was a random survey, spends at least 30% of her workday on social networking activities. Think about that, 30%. Think of the impact that has on productivity. Of 18 and 44, more than half manage one employee, and one half are top or middle managers that have been at a company for 3 to 5 years. 25% say of employees are active social networkers in the workplace. So this conduct is going on during working hours, preventing more responding risks. What can we do in this more negative ethics experiences? Well, it may be well advised to take into account that Facebook ended as a social professional medium of online communication, and therefore the information gathered as such without drawing conclusions about users. Misconduct. It is high. A record number of employees choose to report observed misconduct. You can see how it has steadily climbed since 2005. Let me put context for you. They experienced some kind of retaliation by misconduct. So what else does this report tell us? That the pressure increase in the community on employees, and when the pressure is up, misconduct is likely to follow. Ethics Bureau, this pressure approaching its highest level since 2000. Talk about pressure to compromise in a company's ethics standards or policies, or even the law. According to this survey, a full 15% of employees said they felt pressure to break law, get the job done. And again, since 2000, just before corporate skills triggered a new emphasis on corporate ethics. An all-time high. The top most frequently observed observed types of misconduct. 2011, which is the latest reports we have, right? Probably more than, well, a third. Missed company time. Lost activity. 20, resource abuse. 6, violating company internet use policies. That's one we're going to be talking about shortly, is that your customers' current internet use policies, and many employees have these policies in their handbooks, where they call them electronic communication policies. Risk of being presumptuous, need to be significantly updated. Updated to address social media, updated to address the proliferation of smartphones in the workplace and how to manage employee use. It's a very fine line because at the same time, retaliation, it is an all-time high. Of retaliatory actions are excluded from decision-making or other workplace activity. Now, I don't want to minimize at all the second line in there, given a cold shoulder by other employees. The EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity, for instance, will consider that a factor in determining what an employee has been retaliated against. Think about it. An employee reports observed misconduct and all of a sudden has no friends issued in the workplace. That's considered retaliation. You can see the list of other types of conduct that can be considered retaliation. I think we agree that retaliation contributes to workplace instability. Talented people to look for other jobs, and in turn depriving businesses of these people with key skills. It needs managed, and it needs properly. Fines of perceptions about scissors are declining. More employees have a negative view of supervisors' ethics than before. Important role that our managers and supervisors play, these things are disconcerting, and suggests that a further decline in workplace ethics is looming and may already be underway. Well, the employees more likely to look to supervisors when they misconduct, and you can see that on the sidebar there. This is a troubling downturn. It also says that employees are more tolerant of questionable behaviors. Look at the sign. Tolerant of tweeting negatively at colleagues. As we're in the next 10 minutes or so, a certain amount of that is permissible under federal law. But again, if you look at each of the questionable behaviors, and the social networkers and those who are active social networkers, so employees observe more misconduct, leading to misuse of company time. Again, see what is how significantly higher they are than those who are not active social network users. And these are all risks, not all of them, but most of them constitute potential exposure to legal sexual harassment. false crime reports, abusive behavior, poor quality. It's enhancing these, and that there are a number of federal laws that govern social media, or have at least addressed it. Is the National Labor Relations Act, and that is a law that's administered by the Labor Relations Board. The Relations Board, we probably historically think of as, that's the agency that deals with unions and contracts and strikes. With less Americans than ever before belonging to unions, the Relations Board has to make itself relevant, and it cites to social media, private sector, and in particular, the restriction by employers of employee use of social media. And the National Labor Relations Board has come out and said in at least a dozen recent decisions that an employee can vent on Facebook. And an employee can complain and can make negative comments. Mere gripes aren't. But what the Relations Board is looking at, federal agency, is the employer's policy restricting the employee's right of free speech. So this is a relatively new player in the social media game. The Civil Rights Act is always in play when it comes to media, particularly when it comes to, employers monitoring use of social media or looking at social media websites. They may come across information inadvertently regarding certain employees' protected characteristics that they might not otherwise know of unless they looked at their Facebook page. I posted a bunch of things earlier about I'm running the Susan G. Komen event. Both my mother and sister died of breast cancer. Things of that nature. The Non-Discrimination Act is a federal law which prohibits the movement of information. And where does genetic information come from? Where do employers get it? They get it from trolling the net, from social media sites, their employees' social media site. Or they overhear employees talking about it. There are exceptions to the acquisition of this information. They're narrow, and what the law really seeks to accomplish is to prevent employers from using information to make personnel decisions. Could be the employer who looks at an employee's Facebook page, and as I mentioned, on her Facebook page, this employee is soliciting support for breast cancer because both her mother and sister died and she carries the breast cancer gene. A Neanderthal employer, and there are plenty of them, believe me, one of the reasons we're so busy, might see that information and say, breast, I wonder if there's a risk for me to undertake. Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act prevents conduct like that. The Americans with Disabilities Act that monitor and manage social media, the ADA, again, through the acquisition of information that remains in their thought process and may or be put to use subconsciously at some point down the road when dealing with a particular employee. So just not only of the ethical consequences of social media use in the workplace, but federal law. And these are the big four right now. Now, this risk can be mitigated. understanding the scope of networking. That's what I film with you in the empirical data. The second component is to come up with a that deepens but National Labor Relations Board says is and really ethical behavior, perhaps saying we will not require employees to give us their Facebook passwords, or we will not look at employees' personal information. There are all sorts of ways you can go there. Certainly, you've got to train supervisors because this is happening right under their noses. What is happening? Employees accessing their social media sites, updating their Facebook status, sending tweets or whatnot during work. And supervisors wonder, how come I get the same productivity I got a year ago or 6 months ago? Or why aren't you getting your tasks completed? Educated as what type of social media is at play, what their employees are dealing with, and what the supervisors can and can't do in managing it and monitoring employee use. And we want to have a policy that ensures all who use social media behave ethically. Things go a long way towards mitigating the risk. Just mentioned your social media policy is the most important component, or really beginning, the first brick in the wall, if you will. And your internet usage policy is not enough to encompass social media. Internet usage policies usually say nothing more than you can't use the internet, for personal use, and you can't download anything without permission, and don't change that. But they don't necessarily address the use of social media on a smartphone. And employees who think, well, I have no right to monitor what I'm doing on my smartphone since it's my phone and not the employer's computer, well, they're mistaken. Because as soon as they walk in to that building and perhaps hook up to the employer's wireless network, game. Policy. I want to consider the various parameters first that exist. There's federal law, there's the National Labor Relations Act, which says an employee has a right to concerted activity, and that means the right to speak about his or her of employment. Second, what the deal will be using media. Ensuring that employees are not using social media to engage in misconduct against each other. Maybe some of you have heard of Twitter wars, where one group is going against another group via Twitter. And that's stuff that stay on Twitter and manifests itself in the workplace. So there has to be a protocol procedure for use and violations of the policy. Again, of course, reminding employees that the electronic communications are company property, and even personal smartphones are subject to inspection, monitoring, what have you. And the last component of mitigating this is actual training. for supervisors and managers, ensuring that ethical behavior company philosophy. And I'll tell you how many company philosophies I see at the beginning of a handbook, only to learn that we're averaging one employment discrimination claim a month. Something wrong there. Training to understand the policy, to understand the legal issues at work, not to become any lawyers, but just to at least gain a familiarity with the touchstone that social media is, and deal with performance issues arising from overuse of social media at work. Despite the fact, for instance, that the National Labor Relations Board says employees can complain about their jobs on Facebook, doesn't mean that they can take up their working day doing that. While at work, they have work responsibilities, and if an employer decides there is to be no social media use in working hours, an employer would be within the right to promulgate that type of policy.